Well, look at them now. Really, take a second and look at them. The ones who swore you were finished, who spoke your name like a past tense. They used your silence as proof of defeat. They told stories about your downfall like it was their weekend entertainment. But now, they can't even look you in the eyes. That's the funny thing about survival. It doesn't make noise. It just breathes, rebuilds, and then walks back into the room looking untouchable. They expected your destruction to be permanent. They didn't realize that some people aren't built to collapse. They're built to adapt, to harden, to evolve, right in front of the ruins. The world doesn't clap for the ones who crawl out of wreckage. It stares, confused, uncomfortable, a little scared. You can feel it, can't you? That strange silence that follows when you walk in. The same voices that once screamed your name now whisper it like it's a secret. They can sense something shifted. Your energy isn't the same. You're not chasing approval anymore. You became the storm they once prayed to survive. Press that like button and subscribe. Not because I told you to, but because this message exists for you. For the few who didn't break, for the ones who turned pain into power and gave the universe something to talk about. You being here keeps this fire alive. You being here proves it's not over for the ones who fight back in silence. They thought you'd beg, you didn't. They thought you'd explain, you refused. You disappeared, healed in private, and now the universe itself seems to move differently around you. You walk lighter but heavier with truth. There's a quiet in you that unnerves them because it means you're no longer reacting, you're calculating. You used to dream about peace, now you are peace. Not the soft kind, the kind forged in chaos. There's something poetic about the way betrayal shapes real ones. It cuts, but it also carves. Every scar became a line in your story. Every sleepless night became a blueprint. You've been through enough plot twists to make Shakespeare rewrite tragedy. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the humiliation, all of it was training. While they were laughing at your pain, they were accidentally helping you grow teeth. You became fluent in endurance, fluent in silence, fluent in surviving what should have erased you. It's strange, isn't it? How the same people who broke you now try to mimic your strength. They copy your tone, your patience, your calm. They'll post quotes about healing as if they invented it, forgetting you were the case study. They wanted to see you lose, but you taught them what loss really looks like. It's living with the fact that you became everything they tried to destroy. Once upon a time, you were the one crying behind closed doors, wondering if life would ever stop hurting. You begged for closure that never came, apologized for things that weren't your fault, and forgave people who never said sorry. But the universe took notes. It doesn't forget the ones who keep standing after every hit. That's why you started seeing shifts. Opportunities that came out of nowhere, peace that didn't make sense, strength that felt unnatural. It wasn't luck, it was justice. The kind that moves slow but hits hard. You've reached a point most people never get to. You've seen how fake kindness can be. You've learned how some smiles hide envy and how some advice is just sabotage in disguise. Yet you never turned bitter. You just stopped entertaining nonsense. That's the highest form of revenge, indifference. They can't destroy what no longer reacts. You outgrew the game. You don't even play it anymore. And that's why they hate you now, because your peace cost them their power. You became everything they feared, grounded, unbothered, and free. They see it in your eyes, that calm fury that says, "I've been to hell and it's overrated." You used to chase validation. Now validation would chase you if it could catch up. Remember this: every villain in history was once the person who refused to be disrespected again. They got tired of apologizing for their power. You're not heartless. You just learned how to protect the parts of you that nobody defended. That's not darkness. That's self-respect. So here you stand, not as the victim, not as the survivor, but as the aftermath itself. You took damage that would have erased 99% of people, but you rebuilt yourself with the debris. You turned pain into architecture. You stopped asking for fairness and started building empires out of what was left. And now, when they see you, they remember what they did, and it eats them alive. The universe didn't save you, it trained you, and now the world has to live with what it created. Someone who doesn't break, doesn't beg, and doesn't lose sleep over people who already lost access to your energy. This is your era, not the comeback, the takeover. And hey, chosen one, yeah, you, the one who walked through the kind of pain that should have erased you. You didn't just survive it, you absorbed it. That's power they'll never understand. Before we go any deeper, take a second and drop 999 in the comments. Not for luck, but for proof that you're built different, that you're part of the rare 1% who didn't fall when everything collapsed. Hit that like button and subscribe, not out of habit, but to strengthen this circle of survivors who turned agony into armor. Every interaction here feeds the message, fuels the movement, and keeps this energy alive for the ones still crawling through the fire you already conquered. Now brace yourself. What comes next isn't a pep talk. It's the breakdown of how monsters like you are made, how pain turns into precision, and how survival becomes a skill so sharp it scares the world. If you're still here, you already feel it. That pull in your chest isn't random, it's recognition. So stay. Let's tear the truth open step by step, and by the end, you'll understand exactly why they couldn't destroy you, even when they should have. Number 1. When they clapped for your collapse, they signed their own downfall. They cheered too early. They mistook your silence for death, not realizing you were busy becoming something they'll never recover from. They thought the end of you would be entertaining. They gathered in corners, whispering like vultures waiting for the last breath. Every rumor, every snide laugh, every fake concern, all of it was a celebration of what they thought was your fall. They saw your absence and called it defeat. They mistook your retreat for ruin. But they forgot. Storms don't die when the thunder stops. Sometimes they just gather power. You remember that moment, don't you? The day everything cracked. When the calls stopped, the smiles faded, and you realized how disposable you were to people who swore they'd never leave. They didn't even hesitate. They threw a party in your downfall. And the worst part, you were too broken to fight it, too numb to defend yourself. But the thing about hitting rock bottom is, it's solid ground. You learned how to build from there. They never imagined you'd come back. They loved the version of you that bled quietly, the one that took blame, apologized, and stayed loyal to people who were secretly rooting for your failure. That's the version they killed. But what crawled out of that grave isn't the same person. You came back with eyes that see through lies, a heart that doesn't beg, and energy that no longer bends. You didn't rise for revenge, you rose because staying down was never your nature. Let's get one thing clear. They didn't just underestimate you, they miscalculated the entire formula. You were never fragile, you were unfinished, you were still being built while they were busy laughing. Every time they pointed fingers, you were learning. Every time they shut doors, you were studying how to build your own. You became fluent in disappointment, fluent in betrayal, fluent in every emotion they weaponized against you, until nothing could pierce you anymore. And look at them now, still circling, still gossiping, still trying to figure out how you're breathing when they buried you years ago. They post fake smiles and talk about growth, but deep down, they know the truth. Their victory aged like milk. You became living proof that their cruelty was nothing but background noise in your evolution. They wanted your ending to be tragic. Instead, it became cinematic. You are the sequel they never saw coming. Here's the part that really burns them. You didn't just survive, you upgraded. You turned loss into leverage. You used rejection as fuel. You made peace your flex. They're stuck in the same old cycles, recycling excuses, still pretending they're fine. Meanwhile, you're out here reinventing yourself in silence, carrying yourself like the world should have known better. That's the kind of revenge no scream can deliver. The quiet kind. The type that makes your existence feel like judgment day to the ones who doubted you. You can almost hear the cracks forming in their voices when they mention your name. They thought time would erase you, but time made you timeless. You became the memory they can't delete, the name that tastes like regret when they speak it. You haunt them, not because you seek revenge, but because your peace is the loudest reminder of what they lost when they lost you. They'll try to rewrite history now, pretend they were always on your side, say they always knew you'd make it. That's how guilt hides behind fake nostalgia and selective memory. But you remember everything, the silence, the laughter, the way they looked away when you were at your lowest. Don't let their apologies disguise themselves as friendship. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them a seat at your table. You built that table from the wreckage they left behind. You see, when they celebrated your collapse, what they really revealed was themselves. They showed their fear of your potential. They didn't hate you. They envied you. They saw your light dim for a second and thought, finally. But that's what envy does. It mistakes your transformation for destruction. What they didn't understand was that destruction was the plan. You had to break to become unbreakable. You had to lose everything fake to find what was real. And the real ones, they always return stronger, quieter, sharper. You're not walking around trying to prove anything now. Your presence alone does the talking. You're not explaining your peace. You're not defending your solitude. You're living proof that power doesn't announce itself. It moves in silence, and when it speaks, it doesn't stutter. Every scar you carry is a receipt. Every lesson, a weapon. Every loss, an upgrade. You didn't just go through hell, you mapped it out, learned the exits, and came back to guide others through it. That's why they can't stand you now. You have knowledge they can't buy, and scars they can't fake. You've seen the worst of humanity and still refuse to turn bitter. That's not weakness, that's divine discipline. The universe doesn't waste pain on the weak. So next time you think about those who clapped when you fell, remember, they weren't your enemies. They were your educators. They showed you exactly who doesn't deserve front row seats to your rebirth. You owe them nothing but distance. Their karma isn't coming. It's already here, every time they scroll past your progress pretending not to care. You don't have to forgive them to be free. You just have to outgrow them, and you did. They're still stuck analyzing a version of you that no longer exists. You've moved into a league where they can't reach, can't compete, can't even comprehend the level of peace you now carry. You're not chasing redemption, you became it. So let them talk, let them laugh, let them pretend you're still broken. You know the truth, the collapse they celebrated was their last victory, because from that moment on, your silence became your strategy, and your rise became their reminder. They thought they ended your story. They only ended their relevance in it. You took damage that would have erased 99% of people, but you're not 99%. You're the aftermath, the quiet storm, the living contradiction to every lie they told. They wanted to see you burn, but instead, you became the fire itself. And now, they have to live in the smoke. Number 2, the raw truth of survival, where pain turned into precision. You didn't just make it through hell, you studied it, memorized its exits, and came back with the blueprint. Let's stop pretending survival was poetic. It wasn't. It was ugly, humiliating, and lonely in ways language can't fully touch. You didn't heal beautifully. You crawled through nights that smelled like fear and silence. You screamed until your throat broke, but no one heard it. You kept breathing when breathing felt like betrayal. That's what you survived. And don't let anyone dress it up with fancy words. Survival wasn't a quote on a wall. It was you versus everything that said you shouldn't exist anymore. You survived being erased emotionally, socially, spiritually. People who swore they'd die for you suddenly had somewhere better to be. Love turned from warmth to warfare, from "I'll always be here" to cold stares and empty rooms. They didn't just leave, they left with your trust, your softness, and your sense of safety. You learned that forever was just another word people use when they want to keep you still long enough to drain you. And the worst part? The world didn't pause for your pain. You woke up every day expected to function, to smile, to pretend you weren't disintegrating behind closed doors. You went to work like nothing happened. You laughed at small talk while your insides felt like glass. You became an expert in emotional disguise. That's not healing. That's warfare. Quiet warfare. Imagine this. You're drowning, and instead of help, people hand you stones labeled "Be strong," "Move on," "Stay positive." You didn't swim because you were okay. You swam because you refused to die in front of people who wanted to see it. They'll never understand what it's like to be mentally exhausted before noon, to look at your reflection and not recognize the person staring back, to wake up every morning carrying yesterday's pain because it never really ended. It just changed shape. They see your current calm and think you're lucky. They don't realize that calm was earned through fire. You built peace in a war zone. You carried yourself through every heartbreak with no one to witness the battle but your own shadow. You survived isolation so silent it echoed. You survived being ghosted by people who once swore they couldn't live without you. You survived sitting in rooms where your name was twisted, your intentions distorted, your loyalty mocked. You didn't just lose people, you lost illusions, and illusions cut deeper than knives. Because when reality finally hit, it wasn't the pain of losing them that broke you. It was realizing you were never seen to begin with. And imagine this, you standing in the middle of your old life, looking around at the wreckage, realizing there's nothing left to go back to. The job's gone, the friend's gone, the love story turned obituary. It felt like a death, didn't it? Except you were still alive, forced to live with ghosts that wouldn't leave your head. That's what survival really is, existing after the funeral of your old self. You survived financial freefall, the kind that makes you check your balance and feel your stomach drop. You learned humility in front of bills and strangers who didn't care about your backstory. You had to rebuild dignity from scratch while pretending you weren't falling apart. And then came the health scares, when your body started reflecting the damage your mind had been hiding. Nights spent praying your chest pain wasn't the last thing you'd feel. Mornings spent convincing yourself to get out of bed, even when your limbs felt like lead. Let's not pretend it was strength that carried you every time. Sometimes it was autopilot, sometimes it was fear, Sometimes it was pure stubbornness, the quiet voice that said, "No, not like this. Not yet." You didn't conquer pain. You coexisted with it until it got tired of fighting you. You turned suffering into muscle memory. You taught your mind to move even when your soul wanted to quit. They told you to let go, but they never told you how it feels to watch the hands you held build homes with someone else. They told you to forgive, but they never saw the nightmares. They said, "It'll make sense one day," but that day still hasn't come, and you made peace with the fact it might never. Because real survival isn't about finding meaning in what broke you. It's about learning how to live without needing that meaning anymore. And here's the brutal truth. Survival changes your wiring. You don't trust the way you used to. You don't love the way you used to. You stopped expecting people to care because you learned most only show up when the storm has passed. You've become hyper-aware, reading micro-expressions like a detective. You don't call it paranoia anymore. You call it pattern recognition. You can't unsee what survival taught you. Imagine you're a blade, once dull, now sharpened by every strike that was meant to destroy you. That's what you became. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every sleepless night was a forge. You learned the rhythm of pain so well it started working for you instead of against you. They say you've changed. They're right, but not in the way they think. You didn't grow colder, you grew exact. You don't waste words, you don't waste time. You don't confuse attention with loyalty anymore. You probably still wonder sometimes, was it worth it? Was the pain necessary? Did it all have to happen this way? The answer isn't comforting, but it's honest. Yes, because without that collapse, you'd still be asleep. You'd still be soft in rooms that required armor. You'd still be begging for acceptance from people who didn't even like themselves. You lost everything fake so the real could find space to exist. You're not who you were before the damage. You're who you became because of it. That's what terrifies them now. You have nothing left to lose. Pain gave you freedom, the kind that can't be manipulated, can't be bought, can't be faked. When you've already lived through what others fear, nothing they do can scare you. That's why your silence is power now. That's why your peace feels like revenge. Survival didn't just make you strong, it made you aware. You see through the masks now. You can tell who's real by the way they handle your silence. You don't chase closure anymore because you understand that endings don't need to be pretty to be final. You stopped needing people to validate your healing because the mirror does it for you every morning. You're not broken. You're data, memory, and adaptation. You're living proof that chaos can't erase what's written in resilience. So when people say, "You're so calm now," let them think it's peace. You know the truth? It's discipline. You earned that stillness the hard way, and every time someone tries to test it, the universe just smiles, because it knows what it took for you to sit in that calm without shaking. You survived what others wouldn't even speak about. That's not luck, that's legacy. You're walking evidence that the human spirit doesn't just endure, it evolves. You didn't just survive destruction, you mastered it. You became fluent in your own chaos and turned it into control. And that, chosen one, is the raw truth of survival. You didn't just live through the fire, you learned how to command it. Number 3. The silence that scared them. You stopped talking about your pain, and suddenly the world got nervous. Because silence means power, and power means you no longer need them. They expected noise, they expected chaos, they expected you to fall apart publicly so they could whisper about it behind closed doors. But you didn't. You vanished. You went underground like a secret operation, quiet, focused, untouchable. No updates, no pity posts, no long explanations, just absence. And that absence spoke louder than any confession could. You weren't gone, you were rebuilding, quietly, ruthlessly. Healing isn't a performance, it's a war that takes place where no one claps for you. Imagine this, the same people who pushed you into the fire kept looking over the edge, waiting for screams. But all they heard was silence. That silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. You weren't just surviving, you were studying. You learned who smiled only when you were losing. You learned who enjoyed your vulnerability disguised as concern. You learned that healing isn't about talking, it's about cutting access. You didn't heal in sunlight, you healed in dim rooms with tear-streaked mirrors. You stitched your soul together with trembling hands and no witnesses. You didn't announce progress because progress doesn't beg for attention. You moved different, walked different, looked at the world with eyes that had already seen its worst. You stopped trying to be understood, and that's when you became unstoppable. You didn't rebuild with applause, you rebuilt with silence, sweat, and sheer refusal to stay broken. Picture yourself sitting alone on nights that felt endless, when every thought tried to convince you you'd never feel whole again. And yet, you kept showing up. You stopped trying to prove your worth. You stopped explaining your pain. You started protecting your peace like it was currency, because it is. You learned that not everyone deserves to witness your healing. Some only show up to measure your scars. You used to explain why you disappeared. Now you just disappear. You used to defend your boundaries. Now they defend you. That's what quiet healing does. It rewires the power dynamic. It confuses the enemy because they can't read silence. They can't weaponize what they can't access. You became unpredictable, unreadable, and that scared them more than any comeback post ever could. When you stop speaking, they start stuttering. Your silence made them face themselves. They can't pretend anymore that you needed them. You're no longer the one seeking validation. You're the standard they can't live up to. You stopped fighting to be understood by small minds and started living in peace so rare it feels like rebellion. That's what real healing looks like. Not loud, not pretty, not public, just quiet strength layered over old wounds, resilience disguised as calm. You didn't come back to prove a point. You came back because you still had one. Number 4. The collapse that never came, and it haunts them. They waited for your breakdown like it was their favorite show, but you cancelled the season, changed the channel, and built your own network. They had front row seats to what they thought would be your end. They came prepared, popcorn in one hand, ego in the other, ready to watch you self-destruct. You could feel it, couldn't you? That quiet anticipation from the ones who once smiled in your face. They wanted drama, chaos, and proof that they were right about you. But instead, you gave them silence. No meltdown, no collapse, just evolution. That's what broke them. You didn't fall, you disappeared into discipline. Imagine this. They sat there refreshing your downfall like a feed, waiting for the post that never came. They checked your silence like it was evidence. They asked around, pretending to care. How are they doing? But what they really meant was, did they finally break? Yet every rumor of your downfall aged badly because you refused to perform pain for their entertainment. You healed off camera, rebuilt off grid, and returned unrecognizable. You were supposed to shatter. Instead, you became bulletproof. That's the kind of twist life saves for the real ones. You took the wreckage they left you in and used it as insulation, protection from future storms. You didn't collapse. You crystallized. You stopped chasing closure because you realized you didn't need their apology to rise. Their betrayal didn't end you, it refined you. You learned how to sit in silence so steady it made the universe rearrange itself around your calm. They can't handle that you no longer respond, that your energy isn't reactive anymore. You used to be a storm they could provoke. Now you're an ocean, deep, still, and terrifying in your control. They can't compete with someone who has nothing left to prove. You stopped existing in their emotional economy, and that's what destroyed them. You no longer live in their weather system. You became the climate itself. Their words can't rain on you anymore. Their validation can't warm or freeze you. You built your own atmosphere, one they can't survive in. You used to crave their acknowledgement. Now their silence is your peace offering. Every time they try to predict your downfall, they end up forecasting their own irrelevance. They thought your story ended with suffering. They didn't know suffering was your syllabus. Every heartbreak was a lesson, every betrayal a degree. And when graduation day came, you didn't invite them to the ceremony. You walked across the stage in silence, carrying nothing but the wisdom they paid for with their cruelty. They waited for the collapse, but you built a kingdom instead. That's what terrifies them now. They can't laugh at your pain anymore because you turned it into power. They can't stand in your shadow because it's too bright. You outgrew their world entirely. You didn't just survive it, you made it irrelevant. The collapse never came because you learned the truth. You were never falling apart. You were falling into place. Number 5. The question that haunts them. What even are you? They can't label what they don't understand, and they don't understand you, because you were supposed to end, not evolve. They whisper it now, half in awe, half in fear. What are you? They've seen people crumble for less. People lose their minds over half the pain you carried like luggage through a war zone. You didn't just bounce back. You came back colder, wiser, and quieter. And that's what rattles them most. Not the survival, but the silence that followed it. You didn't announce your healing. You just started moving different. You stopped talking about peace and started embodying it. You didn't forgive to free them. You forgave to unchain yourself. You're not a miracle. You're evidence that pain can be repurposed into precision. Imagine this. They threw everything at you: betrayal, loss, humiliation, isolation, and you absorbed it like a black hole, silent but unstoppable. You didn't reflect destruction. You swallowed it and converted it into awareness. You became the quiet kind of dangerous, the kind that doesn't react, only observes. That's what terrifies them. Because once you've mastered your own chaos, no one else's can touch you. They replay it in their heads. How did you survive that? They don't understand that you stopped needing the world to make sense. You accepted that fairness doesn't exist, that closure is optional, and that love isn't always loyal. You learned to find stability inside yourself, not from others. You became the kind of person who can lose everything and still wake up with purpose. That kind of resilience makes people uncomfortable because it exposes how easily they'd crumble under the same weight. You're not a superhero, you're the correction, proof that endurance can outshine ego. The truth is, you're what happens when pain meets intelligence. You studied your scars like scripture, decoded your triggers, and learned how to weaponize calm. You became the reminder that strength isn't loud. It's surgical. You don't swing wildly anymore. You strike with precision. You don't argue with lies. You outlast them. Imagine them scrolling through your life now, trying to reconcile your peace with their predictions. They said you'd never recover, yet here you are, existing like a glitch the system can't delete. They don't know how to fight someone who doesn't respond, who doesn't need revenge, who has already made peace with the chaos. That's the haunting part. You don't want anything from them anymore. You are the result of everything meant to destroy you, operating flawlessly. You're the test they failed, the contradiction they can't explain. You are both the storm and the calm that follows, and deep down, they know. If reality couldn't kill you, nothing they do ever will. Number 6. Thriving beyond survival, the rise they didn't plan for. They buried you, expecting silence. Instead, you grew roots so deep, the earth itself started shaking. You're not surviving anymore. That phase ended the moment you stopped living out of fear. Now you're thriving, and that's what terrifies them, because survival they can understand. They've seen people patch their wounds, fake smiles, pretend to move on. But thriving, that's rebellion. That's you walking through the same fire that once burned you, completely unfazed, almost amused. You're not just existing, you're executing. Every scar became a strategy, every loss became leverage, every heartbreak became data. You took pain, dissected it, learned its patterns, and now you're playing life like chess while they're still throwing checkers on the floor. You stopped reacting. You started orchestrating. You're not fighting battles anymore. You're building empires out of lessons. They expected ashes. They got architecture. Imagine their confusion when the person they mocked became the one they now study in silence. You don't talk about healing. You live it. You don't announce wins. You multiply them in the dark. You're not competing. You're creating. And that's why they can't keep up. They're addicted to appearances. You're obsessed with alignment. You found power in stillness, peace in solitude, and purpose in the pain they thought would paralyze you. They thought your story ended when they left, but you made sure that was just the prologue. You didn't need revenge. Your evolution became it. You didn't chase validation. Your results screamed it for you. You became what they never saw coming. Focused, untouchable, and free. You learned that peace isn't a place you find, it's a weapon you build. You stopped running from your scars and started running with them. That's why life started moving differently for you. Doors began opening without knocking. Opportunities started aligning without begging. The universe noticed your discipline and started rearranging itself to match your energy. You're no longer trying to prove you're over it. You're showing what over it looks like. You're not bitter. You're bulletproof. You're not healed. You're evolved. You're not back. You're beyond. And the ones who once pitied you now pretend they never doubted you, because watching you thrive reminds them how small they stayed. You are the living proof that survival was never the end game. It was the training. And now, every step you take is a quiet revolution against everything that tried and failed to erase you. Number 7. The danger of becoming free when nothing owns you anymore. You stopped begging to be understood, and suddenly the world started fearing your silence. You became dangerous the moment you stopped needing permission to exist. You didn't just escape the cage, you melted the lock, walked away, and never looked back. That's what terrifies them. Not your strength, not your rage, but your indifference. Because when you stop caring about how they see you, they lose every weapon they ever had. Guilt can't reach you. Manipulation doesn't land. Approval means nothing. You became immune to the systems that used to control you. You're not cold, you're clear. Imagine this, you walk through the same rooms that once felt heavy, and everything feels smaller now. The insults, the rejection, the old ghosts, they don't even sting. That's the power of freedom. You stopped negotiating your worth. You stopped explaining your boundaries. You stopped lowering your volume to keep others comfortable. You became untamed in the most elegant way possible. They can't handle that you don't flinch anymore. They don't know how to fight someone who's already made peace with losing everything fake. You faced the basement of existence and built your throne there. When life dragged you to your knees, you didn't pray for escape. You studied the darkness until it bowed to you. You found gold in rock bottom, and now you wear it like armor. They still think freedom means escaping pain. You learned freedom is mastering it. You don't run from the fire anymore. You use it to light your path. They see it now. The way your energy feels heavier, calmer, undeniable. You're not performing strength. You are strength. You no longer talk about boundaries. You are one. And that shift scares people who relied on your fragility. You used to be their emotional punching bag. Now you're a mirror that exposes their weakness. You don't need them anymore. And that's the real danger, because control only works on those who crave connection at any cost, and you don't. You'd rather stand alone in peace than together in chains. You outgrew their influence, their approval, their entire world. You've seen what dependence costs, and you refuse to pay it again. You are dangerous because you've tasted truth, that nothing and no one outside of you can complete you. And once you've known that kind of freedom, there's no going back. They can't predict you. They can't guilt you. They can't reach you. You're no longer reacting to life. You're commanding it. That's the danger of becoming free. You stopped being a participant in their drama and became the proof that liberation is possible. You're not playing by the rules anymore. You are the rule now, and the ones who once watched you fall are now watching their own power slip through their fingers, all because you decided to rise without asking for permission. Number 8. The mirror that terrifies them. Your existence is their exposure. They wanted to study your glow, not knowing it came from surviving fire they'd never walk through. They're watching you now, eyes wide, hands shaking, pretending it's admiration when it's really envy dressed as curiosity. They analyze your calm, your confidence, your silence, trying to decode it like some encrypted formula. But what they'll never admit is that your presence exposes everything they're hiding from. You're a mirror they can't look into for too long. Every time they see you, they see what they could have been if they hadn't quit. You are living proof that excuses have an expiration date. Imagine this: they scroll past your success pretending it doesn't bother them, but their stomach tightens. They replay your old failures in their head, trying to remind themselves why you shouldn't have made it. Yet here you are, unrecognizable, untouchable, unstoppable. You didn't just outgrow them, you outlived their narrative. And now your existence makes their comfort look like cowardice. They want your strength, but not your scars. They want your wisdom, but not your nights of shaking in silence. They want your peace, but not the war it took to earn it. That's why they keep their distance, because deep down, they know they weren't built for the same level of pain tolerance. They could never handle your chapters. They only liked your covers. Your healing wasn't aesthetic, it was surgery without anesthesia. You had to rebuild trust from splinters. You had to love yourself while unlearning self-hate planted by others. You had to become your own rescue team. They can't relate to that kind of labor, so they pretend it's luck. They'll say, "You've changed," as if that's an insult, not realizing that change was the only option that didn't involve self-destruction. You are the reminder they didn't evolve. You're the reflection that whispers, "You could have done this too if you hadn't stopped." And that's the sting they can't soothe. Every time you walk by, you don't just exist. You expose. You force them to confront their own stagnation. You don't mean to haunt them. You just became the truth they keep running from. Your rise isn't revenge. It's reflection. You didn't climb to prove them wrong. You climbed because you refused to live small. But in doing so, you became their nightmare, a walking reminder that they had the same fire, and they let it go out. That's why they study you now, not to learn, but to understand how they lost control of the story. Because somewhere between your silence and your comeback, you stopped being their victim and became their mirror. And the truth it reflects? It burns. Number 9. Death, rebirth, and courage. The art of dying without staying dead. You didn't heal. You resurrected again and again until even the universe had to admit you couldn't be erased. You've died more times than anyone will ever know. Not the kind of death that buries bodies, the kind that buries identities. You watched entire versions of yourself collapse. The naive one, the forgiving one, the one that still believed people meant what they said. You stood inside your own extinction, watching everything familiar turn to ash, and still managed to rebuild while the smoke was choking you. That isn't strength. That's rebellion against oblivion itself. They talk about transformation like it's beautiful. It isn't. It's demolition. Imagine tearing yourself apart piece by piece, removing habits, beliefs, attachments that once felt like home, and doing it without a map, without applause, without anyone understanding what it costs. You didn't transform because you wanted to. You transformed because staying the same would have killed you. You burned yourself down so no one else could ever hold that power again. You performed surgery on your own soul while bleeding out from old wounds. You stitched yourself with patience, stitched again with solitude, and sealed it all with a kind of courage only destruction can teach. You kept going while your inner world was collapsing, and that's what they'll never understand. They see your peace now, but they don't see the chaos you had to command to get here. You didn't survive the fire, you became fluent in it. That's why rebirth looks different on you. You didn't come back shiny or soft. You came back precise, like a weapon crafted from what once hurt you. Every version that died made room for one that was less afraid, less attached, less breakable. You didn't evolve into peace. You forged it through agony. They'll never comprehend what it takes to rebuild yourself from fragments. They still think courage is loud. You know it's quiet. It's waking up again after losing everything that gave you reason to. It's looking at a reflection that doesn't match your memory and saying, "We start again." You mastered the art of dying without staying dead. You've lived through collapses that erased entire parts of your soul, yet here you are, sharper, calmer, stronger. You didn't come back to prove your worth. You came back because extinction refused you. That's the courage no one celebrates, the courage to live through endless funerals of your old self and still keep choosing resurrection over resentment. You didn't just survive, you evolved beyond recognition. And that's what makes you untouchable now. Number 10. The precision of pain. When suffering turned you into strategy. Pain didn't make you cruel, it made you calculated, the kind of calm that terrifies those who thought they broke you. You didn't walk out of the storm angry, you walked out aware. You learned to read energy like a language, to sense intentions before words even formed. You became a strategist in a world full of reactors. You don't throw punches anymore. You redirect them. You don't argue with lies. You let silence prove your point. Pain turned your emotions into instruments, and now you play life with the precision of someone who's already buried their chaos. You didn't build walls. You built filters. Imagine that. Instead of isolating yourself, you curated your world. You built gates where there used to be open doors. You don't block people out of bitterness. You vet them like investments. Not everyone deserves access to peace that cost you your sanity. You stopped confusing forgiveness with access. You can forgive and still refuse to reopen the door, because healing doesn't mean hospitality. You became surgical with your energy. You stopped wasting words. You don't explain why you left the room anymore. You just leave. That's not arrogance. That's efficiency. You learned that not every battle is worth your brilliance. You used to respond to everything. Now your silence does the work. That's how precise pain made you. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. You stopped personalizing every disappointment. You started seeing patterns instead of taking things personally. You understood that people's actions reveal their limits, not your worth. You don't chase closure from those incapable of giving it. You give it to yourself and move forward, lighter, faster, smarter. Pain became your compass, guiding you away from anything that even smells like old wounds. You're soft now, but not weak. Soft like water, calm, reflective, and relentless. You don't need to shout to make an impact. You flow through obstacles and wear down resistance in silence. That's real power, the kind that doesn't demand to be seen. You mastered the balance, gentle enough to love, sharp enough to leave. Pain didn't just teach you survival, it taught you discernment. You became so measured, so deliberate, that even your peace has a pulse. And the irony? The world thinks you're calm now. They have no idea you're just accurate. Number 11. The true victory, when evolution becomes your revenge. You didn't destroy them. You outlived the version of yourself they could still reach. The real victory wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause, confetti, or cinematic closure. It came quietly. In the mornings you woke up without anger. In the moments you stopped replaying the past. In the peace that settled where pain once lived, rent-free. You learned that revenge is just delayed suffering. You stopped wanting to prove anything to anyone and started proving everything to yourself. That's what power looks like. Restraint in a world addicted to reaction. Your peace became the punishment. Imagine this. They expected chaos when you healed, expected gloating when you won. Instead, you gave them nothing. Just calm, just silence, just distance. And that silence eats at them more than any insult ever could, because your evolution made their version of you obsolete. And that's the cruelest kind of justice. You didn't need revenge because you became something their ego can't touch. You don't look for closure in conversations anymore. You find it in your composure. You stopped arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you. You realized they can't see your growth because it exposes their stagnation. You used to crave their recognition. Now you recognize yourself, and that's enough. You turned healing into your headline. Every calm decision is a flex. Every quiet win is a reminder that you rebuilt without the noise. You stopped clinging to memories that hurt and started holding on to the habits that heal. That's the kind of success that doesn't need announcement. It speaks in your energy, your posture, your peace. You stopped needing validation because you became the evidence. The real victory was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving you could live right. You chose peace over payback, growth over grudges, purpose over pride. You understood that some wars end not with surrender, but with evolution. You stopped fighting the old world and started building a new one where your happiness is no longer negotiable. The greatest revenge is living like you were never broken. You didn't win by being louder. You won by becoming untouchable, a living reminder that healing, when mastered, isn't weakness. It's dominance in disguise. Number 12, the untouchable you, when nothing can shake what was built in fire. You stopped waiting for peace to find you. You became it, and now even chaos bows its head in your presence. Now you move through the world like someone who's already seen the worst it can do. You walk slower, think clearer, speak less, not because you're tired, but because you've mastered restraint. That's what real power looks like. You no longer chase energy that doesn't match yours. You don't explain your distance. You embody your evolution. Every step you take is measured. Every word you say is chosen. You no longer waste emotion on people still playing games you outgrew years ago. You're not healing anymore. You're operating. You attract what aligns, repel what drains, and no longer mistake comfort for safety. You became immune to manipulation because you know exactly how control works. You've lived inside it, studied it, and dismantled it from the inside out. You don't react to provocations because you've learned that stillness is the loudest response. Your calm isn't weakness. It's warning. The kind that tells the world, I've already been to hell. Nothing you do can scare me now. Imagine the confusion. The same people who once pitied you now pause around you. Your silence unnerves them. Your peace feels unfamiliar to them because it can't be negotiated or influenced. You've reached the point where external validation sounds like background noise. You don't crave understanding. You don't chase closure. You create it. You used to seek peace. Now you radiate it. You've transcended the need for revenge or recognition. You no longer need to prove what pain taught you. Your presence does it for you. You became both the storm and the calm that follows it. You don't warn people anymore. You let your energy do the talking. And when you enter a room, it shifts. Not because you demand respect, but because you are respect. You are untouchable, not because life stopped trying to hit you, but because you stopped flinching. You learned to turn every hit into information, every wound into wisdom, every loss into leverage. You are both living proof and living art, the final masterpiece forged from what should have broken you. They thought the damage would define you. It refined you instead. Now the world watches, confused and captivated, trying to understand how you're still standing. But you're not just standing, you're soaring. You took damage that would have erased 99% of people, and you turned it into your signature.